Strong currents and plenty of wind make the Strait of Gibraltar difficult to navigate in. In just a few days, former Royal Marine Lee Spencer will go beyond this difficult stretch of water as he attempts to row across the Atlantic.
It's by far the hardest thing I've ever done.
This is Lee Spencer's story.
It will be a hugely psychological challenge.
Disability is not going to define Lee Spencer.
I've always dreamt, I've always been a dreamer.
On Thursday, the 18th of January 2018, former Royal Marine Lee Spencer will be setting off from Gibraltar as he attempts an unsupported solo row across the Atlantic. His mission will be completed when he hits the shores of Venezuela. Lee Spencer, the rowing Marine as he's become known, is hoping to raise money for the Royal Marines charity and the Endeavour Fund. And if the story wasn't already extraordinary, Lee Spencer's an amputee, and with the challenge he's intent on proving that no one should be defined by their disability. What inspired you, what drove you to become a Royal Marine?
I think what inspired me to become a Royal Marine was certainly the Falklands War. I was 12 or 13 when that happened, and the Royal Marines were a big part of that. I always remember, I've got a vivid memory of when you go to choose your options around about 13 years of age. They have a careers fair, and I went up to the Royal Marine and said, I want to be a Royal Marine. And the guy there said, he asked me if I was a captain of any of the school teams or anything like that. And I said I wasn't in any of the teams, not only was I not a captain. And he said, you're not really what we're looking for. And that always stuck with me, because I always thought these Royal Marines have got to be like, they're superhumans, and I was, wasn't what they were looking for. I've always dreamt, I've always been a dreamer. And it's what I always wanted to do as a kid. That dream just never left me, and I kept trying. I went back when I was 21 and went to the careers office, passed the initial selection, went away on a week-long selection course called the Potential Royal Marines course, and I flourished from then on.
You enjoyed a career with the Royal Marines. Tell us about that.
I joined up towards the end of the Cold War, so we spent a lot of time in the Arctic, guarding NATO's northern flank. I was a skiing instructor, something I really, really enjoyed. And then the world changed with 9/11.
September the 11th, 2001, a day when the world changed forever. Britain said that it would stand shoulder to shoulder with the USA. British troops were redeployed.
I was at Charlie Company, a section commander with 40 Commando, on the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003, which was a really incredible experience personally. And then I ended up doing 3 tours of Afghanistan. I suppose the defining tour was the middle one for me, which was in 2010. And I was forward deployed with 40 Commando in Sangin. And that was quite a difficult tour for everyone involved, extremely difficult. It was extremely violent and extremely dangerous as well.
And obviously that's something that must have impacted your person greatly, seeing something like that at close hand.
I think my time in Afghanistan, if it left a lasting impact with me, I think it's probably an understanding on how precious life is and how it can change, ironically, because it did change for me shortly after that, how it can change just in a blink of an eye, and you've got to grab every opportunity whilst you can.
Lee has served as a Royal Marine for 24 years, and he survived 3 operational tours of Afghanistan without injury. But it was one night, while off duty and in the UK, that he lived that life-changing event.
I suppose my life changed back in 2014. It was the 5th of January. I was driving back to work after Christmas leave, and I came across a vehicle that had crashed into the central reservation on the M3. The thing is, anyone who spent any time in Afghanistan recently or Iraq has had an extremely high level of medical training, so I would have counted myself as a competent first aider, and it would have been absolutely remiss of me if I hadn't have stopped. So I was helping the people out when another car crashed into the one that they'd got out of, and the engine block and gearbox complete travelled about 70 metres and hit me. When I woke up in hospital, I knew my leg had gone. I was conscious throughout the whole process, but it was more a case of, oh, leg's gone, but I'm alive, I'm here. Because I knew previously, you know, the night before, I'd fought hard to stay alive. Having medical training's great, but okay, if it's not going well, and it wasn't, and I knew that I was dying, and I could feel all of the classic symptoms of shock where your body loses all of its blood. I could feel all those symptoms coming on, and I knew instantly, from the moment it happened, I had between 6 to 12 minutes to stop the bleed before I died. It got quite close, and it was another passing motorist, a Rastafarian called Frank from Hackney, who stopped, and we tried to get a tourniquet around my leg. That wasn't working, so I got his daughter Zanelli to stand on my femoral artery and press down as hard as she could into my groin, and that's what saved my life. If they hadn't helped me, I wouldn't be here now. Absolutely wouldn't. So when I woke up in hospital, it was more a case of relief and elation that I was still here, rather than being disappointed that I'd lost my leg.
Obviously, your military training kicked in during the episode. That played a part as well in your survival, didn't it?
When I've sat and thought about it, I go back to being certainly in Sangin in 2010 or afterwards in 2012 when I was based near Kandahar, where every time you go out on the ground, you kind of, there's an understanding, you have to make peace with yourself that something like this is going to happen, because it happens all the time. In Sangin in 2010, it was almost a daily occurrence. So you kind of make, you know, you have to go, this might happen, and then put it at the back of your head. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to function, you wouldn't be able to go out and do your job. And I think that resource was still in me, and I didn't know it was. So when it happened, I was able to draw on that. I think that's probably why I kind of coped so well.
Lee realised that his new self would bring changes and some restrictions, but he was intent on finding new strengths in his new situation.
How I initially dealt with going from someone who would have absolutely defined themselves in terms of physicality to being a disabled person was I set myself, I kind of set myself a road and said I'm going to redefine who I am, but this time in terms of disability, and I'm going to try and redefine myself in as positive terms as I can. But within that framework, I knew I was disabled, and it was a big jump, and I felt that being disabled, it's a negative word, it's got dis at the front of it, that to try and make it as positive as I could. So I set myself a couple of goals. The first one was to walk a mile, and I ended up doing that with the 1664 challenge. And then it kind of almost culminated with coming out to the Rock of Gibraltar with the 350 celebrations that was happening. And I guess people remember Henry Cavill being here, Superman. And that was another event that I utilised to help me in my goal in raising £10,000. I raced Henry Cavill up the rock. I think I've been walking for just 6 months when I went up the rock, so that was quite difficult.
Since his life-changing episode, Lee Spencer has embarked on a number of challenges to prove to himself and to others that there's life beyond injury. His most prominent was Road to Recovery, a record-breaking 3,000-mile journey from the Canary Islands to Antigua, as part of an all-amputee group of veteran servicemen. They went on to secure a world record.
The row itself was an amazing experience, but it was also everything I thought it would be. It was absolutely terrifying, especially the first couple of days. It was extremely difficult, but it was also amazing. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. It was an amazing experience. People ask me what the best and the worst parts of rowing the Atlantic are, and I always say with a smile, and this is absolutely true, the worst part by far is the start, and the best part's the finish. It was actually whilst I was rowing the Atlantic, it just suddenly occurred to me that I am the same person, and that, you know, there's a little bit less of me now, but fundamentally there is no change. And that was a really important moment, and I can't overemphasise enough how important it is to rediscover yourself. I know it sounds so trite and actually such a cliche that I went on a journey to rediscover myself or to discover who I am, but that's exactly what happened.